Hi everyone, and welcome to our Learn with Sawgrass Tuesday. I am Rhonda. Thank you for joining me, and apologies for being a little late starting. I'm trying to do some sound stuff, but we're all good. So let's go ahead and jump in. So as you probably know by this point, I do lives on Tuesday afternoons and Wednesday mornings. This week is all about some tips for success. So today we're going to look specifically at my top 10 pressing tips. Now, this is not everything that you need to know about pressing, but it's kind of the things that I see as being the biggest issues. And I've gotten over the last few months with Versaflex especially, people have started asking me things, and so I've been able to kind of say, well, if you do this or you do that. So hopefully these pressing tips will help you. I'm going to be bouncing up and down a little bit between here and the press. So I'm going to move this over so I'm not tripping over it all day, and we will go ahead and get started. And I'm not going to get it caught in my chair either. All right. There we go. All right, so here are my top 10 tips for pressing. And just to go ahead and tell you, and I'll tell you at the end as well, join us tomorrow. You're going to have my top 10 Sawgrass software tips. So between the design tool and Sawgrass Print Utility, we're going to go through some tips there tomorrow. All right, so the first one is know your press. I did not realize how important this was until we started testing Versaflex, and I learned some very important things. So the first thing is this. This is a heat gun. If I were to point this into my press, it's going to tell me the temperature, the actual temperature of the press. So having a heat gun on hand is a really good thing. We did have a press here in the building. No, it's not this one or one you've seen recently, but we did have a press here in the building that was actually 40 degrees higher than the temperature that was showing on the LCD panel. So where sublimation can sometimes be a little more forgiving, Versaflex with the Versaflex light paper is not. So that is a lot more temperature sensitive, and of course we probably would have seen it depending on what product we did, because some are just going to be a little bit more likely to brown a little bit if they get too hot. So one of those things that we learned the hard way, temperature gun, make sure that your temperature on your press is accurate. The next one is going to be all about pressure. So let me kind of demonstrate this. You really have to know your press, because most presses that are kind of commercially out there that most people have are going to be like ours that are manually adjusted. So you need to know, it's not going to tell you this is 40 psi, this is low pressure, this is high pressure, so you kind of have to play with it. This press is a lot of fun. If I would have an item in there, I can usually see it. So typically what I have learned is that if the item, I can see that when it's closed, it's touching the top and bottom, there's not a lot of like pushback on me, that's going to be medium pressure. Now, if I were to tighten this, and you're going to see me do Versaflex at the end, to the point where it's almost, there's a little bit of resistance as I'm closing it, that's going to be your high pressure. Your loose pressure, it doesn't even feel like it touches. The way that I've always heard it, and the way that I kind of like to think of it, is like if you took a piece of paper and put it in your press and had it kind of hanging out. If you tugged it and it didn't really move, that's medium pressure. If I could tug it and wiggle it, that's your light pressure. And then if I tug it and it almost rips, it's in there so firmly, that's going to be your high pressure. And you will need to do a range. If you do ever need to see it, I'll make sure and show this again tomorrow. But if you are in the Sawgrass Print Utility and you go to the Help menu, you will see there's a pressing guide for both your Sublimation ink and for your Versaflex ink to kind of show you what those pressures should be, what those temperatures should be. So that's a really helpful tool as well. The third thing that I want to kind of talk about is cold spots on your press. There will be times where your press starts to go out. Still having slight sound issues. Sorry about that. Is that better? Awesome. So if you have there are times where sections of your press may go out and the rest of the press be good. So in those situations, you probably are noticing that there's a spot that just doesn't seem to be the same consistency. It doesn't seem that the ink adhered, bonded, sublimated properly, and that it's just not as bright or as vibrant. If you are noticing that same area looks that way no matter what the print is, that's going to be, or if there's a section that looks the same on all your prints, that's going to be a cold spot on your press. So this is why we often tell you to keep some polyester fabric on hand. Just buy a couple of yards. Now you can buy a couple of yards of cotton too with the Versaflex light paper, but just have some fabric on hand so that you can press onto it, do something that kind of fills your areas of your press, test your different areas. If you see that you may be having an issue, to see if it is an actual issue with the press. Tip 2 is about tape and blowout paper. Now these next few is use tape and blowout paper if needed. The next few are all going to read if needed, and I'll tell you those situations where they are needed. So you'll notice we'll start with the tape and then we'll move on to the blowout paper. So tape is very important, but it really depends on what your product is, how much tape you need. Now, why do you use tape? Specifically with true sublimation, with your Sublimation paper, it's going to help hold in place. Now, if I'm going on to a polyester shirt, and you're going to see me press on a polyester in just a little bit, you're going to notice I'm probably going to hit top, bottom, left, and right. And that's really all I'm going to hit. You're going to notice that if I'm doing a mug, I'm going to go both seams and around the top and the bottom. Mugs tend to gas, which is where the ink escapes when it's in the gas form, and it leaves those almost like trails. And they may be small and may go longer. It just really depends on how it gases. But I usually tape mugs very heavily. When I do a tumbler, whether it's a water bottle, whether it's a 20 ounce, whether it's glass, what I have learned is that I always tape on the seam, and then I always tape the top and the bottom on the opposite side. And that's because what I have learned is that in a tumbler press, if you're not careful, if you don't have it pulled tight enough, the paper buckles. And so you'll often see that right across from your tape or whatever goes down, it will sometimes just kind of pinch. And there's no ink, or the ink doesn't transfer as well in that area. And so that's why I always tape it to kind of hold it in place. Typically, I do similar to what I do with a shirt. So I'm going all the way down the seam, but then I'm usually going, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. Just to kind of get my full coverage around. So you'll see that I'm going to do a tumbler today as well. So you're going to see how I do that. But I do try to tape it just to make sure that it doesn't shift. Now, when we talk about the Versaflex light paper, that is one of the benefits of it going on wet, is you really don't have to worry about that. So you'll notice that it's going to hold in place without you needing that tape. You don't have to worry about the gassing. It's not true sublimation. So when you're using the Versaflex light paper, You do not have to worry about that. And I forgot a very important point. If you do have any questions for me, please put them in the chat. Rhodes is with me today, and he'll be glad to answer or shoot them over to me. You can make comments too. You don't have to wait until after to tell me that my gloves are too big or that my table is too high. Feel free to just show that into the chat. We love those comments too. All right, so tape, and then let's talk about blowout paper. Now, blowout paper can be several different things. It literally is just a light paper that you are going to use when you are pressing. You can use parchment paper, you can use wax paper. I know there are people who will fight you online about whether you should use one or the other. It doesn't really matter. We haven't seen a big difference. I did have someone who looked over my files for today say not to use a Teflon sheet. Because the Teflon sheets, while they work for vinyl and some other things, they tend to hold moisture a little bit more, which makes sense. So whether it's parchment paper, whether it is true blowout paper, just that paper to kind of cover. Now, why do we do that? The big reason is to protect your press. So generally, you're only putting a sheet on top so that the ink is not transferring through. If it is something where the inked area is larger, like if I'm doing a coaster and there's ink outside of the area, I will often put a sheet underneath so that any ink that flattens out will go into that sheet. It's really just so you're not getting ink on your press, it's containing it, and then by not getting it on your press, you don't have to worry about it. You'll often see me, if I'm doing a smaller item, I'll actually fold my paper over, so I'm using the same sheet of paper underneath as I am on top. But tape and blowout paper, very important really, depending on what you're doing. All right, number 3, pressing pillows. So this really comes into play when we are doing something like this. This is something that is not flat. I often, any bag, if there's a decent seam where there's a lot of fabric on the inside, anything that has buttons, anything that has a zipper, anything that's going to be making it so it's not 100% flat, we're going to want to put a pressing pillow in it. I will sometimes use it with a shirt, depending on the shirt. If those seams are really heavy, they do come in different sizes. This is the larger size. This would go in a shirt. I think last week I used it inside of a pillow. Pillows are another great one for the pressing pillow. The other thing you always want to make sure and do is you want to remove any accessories that can be removed. You're going to see me do it with a tumbler in just a little bit. But before I did this, I would unsnap these sides. If possible, if you have a zipper, you want to keep the zipper outside. Zippers can get damaged in the press just because of the pressure. So keeping those outside are really good. But like I said, you can, whether it's your dealer, whether out there that have these pressing pillows, really handy for those situations where your product isn't flat and even, just to make it flat and even. And often, if I'm doing something like a denim jacket or anything like that, I will actually put this underneath it just so it kind of cushions those buttons and makes everything flat and even. So remove anything you can remove, keep anything you can outside of the press, and for anything else you want to use a pressing pillow. This is a really, so we've been doing these nylon pouches now with the Versaflex. We really love them. And what we have learned is that you can stuff it. So of course this isn't going to have a pressing pillow that's thick enough. So we will often fold a shirt or a piece of material and stick it inside to kind of hold that and to help it hold its shape and to kind of create that thickness. So we'll often stick something in there to use it as well. All right. And now my fabric's stuck in my zipper, of course. Okay, so let's talk about silicone pads. So there are a lot of different pads that you can use. Something like this one actually works in both. You could technically use this instead of a pressing pillow. It's a little bit thicker. It also works as the silicone pad. Now we use these silicone pads for anything that is fragile. This is my favorite. I keep this one hid away. I won't let anyone steal this from me. But we use this for anything that is a little on the delicate side to cushion it. So we're going to put this in the press when we're doing ceramic, tiles or coasters, when we're doing glass, and then also when we're doing acrylic, which is my sample here today. So when I am doing acrylic, I will always put this pressing pad in there just to cushion it. Another really good thing for a pressing pad, and I forgot to bring a piece, is slate. So if you're doing slate photo tiles, this helps. And the reason it helps with that is it actually helps to push the product to push the ink into the product. So something like a slate is usually not completely flat. I know someone was doing another project earlier that this came up. Anything that's not 100% flat or even, you can use that silicone pad. It just helps to even the surface and to push that into where it belongs. So this is a really great tool to have as well. So when you need it, use a silicone pad. And again, I typically say anything in the stone family, ceramic family, slate, and then glass and acrylic as well. Just those things that need a little bit of extra help. All right, so full wrap drinkware is something we hear about a lot. And one of the big things here is that the technique that I've learned that works best is you start pressing and then so I usually on my press go about 380 and then I go 45 and 45. I know they're a little long, I know that's a little controversial, you may go a little bit lower time than that, but I found that 45 and 45 works well for me. So let's go ahead and do this. So I was really proud of this design. That is not what I wanted to open. 1 over. I'm really proud of this design. I did some graduation gifts last week, and this was actually one of the gifts that I made. So I'm going to make a new version of it today. All right. So let's go ahead and set up my file. Now, I always like to unmirror this for a second if it's something that I didn't do in design tool, just so you can kind of see it. This would be really easy if you had a tree or several different trees that you like to do in our design tool. Just set your custom canvas to the size it needs to be, and then you're just basically doing a copy paste. I did this particular one in Illustrator, but I could do it there as well. So I'll go ahead and start at the top as I always do. I'm going to crop this to my image area. I'm going to go down and I will turn my mirror on. I'm also going to turn this to landscape, so now it's going to fit onto the paper. I will go ahead and center that on the page. Now I am going to change, I am using a printer with Versaflex ink. I could of course do this with Sublimation ink too. I'm going to go down and I'm going to choose my stainless steel. It is on letter, high quality. You notice that light color button went away because I don't need it for this particular product. So I'm just going to go to my color management. I am going to go ahead and do this on Vivid because it being bright and colorful. This actually will go to my brother-in-law who actually works for the state forestry. So I think this little tree design will work well for him. I originally used it for a high school graduate who's really into nature. All right, we're going to go ahead and print that. And I do not have scissors on me today, so we'll be very careful with this. I don't know if it happens at your house, but here in the office, our scissors, we'll put them in one room and then forget to take them back to the original. All right. Okay. Now this is Versaflex ink, but it is on Troubleshooting paper, so I'm going to treat this just as regular sublimation because that's exactly. When I am doing anything, I said it just a minute ago, I will make sure and take off any accessories. So I'm going to pop the top off of this. And then I'm going to line it up. Now I'm going to have to be a little careful because, like I said, I did forget my scissors today. But that's okay. I'm just going to make sure that it's lining up top and bottom. And then my design comes right to the edge of each other. So I've made sure to do this in such a way that there's not a lot of overlap. Probably a little bit more than I usually do, I can tell, but that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Actually, there's not. It's coming right to the edge. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my tape on. Now, here is that heat press tape that we were talking about. I will make sure and tape all the way up the seam. Hopefully I have this nice and tight. Like I said, normally what I'll do with a water bottle like this is I'm going to tape the bottom. A little bit harder to do today, but I actually can still do that. So I'm just going to tape this into place on that bottom. Just put a couple of pieces just so I know it's nice and secure, doesn't buckle on me. And then we're going to go over to our press. All right. Now it doesn't really matter whether the tape is straight up or whether it's kind of more to the back or the side. I do have this pressure kind of on that medium high. And like I said, I usually go about 45 seconds and then I'm going to rotate it. Just because someone talked about my gloves last week, I do have one for each hand this week. I do like these particular ones. And it will beep when it's done. And so we'll go ahead and get that pressed. It's a little of a funny press. I'm not seeing the time change, so I don't know if I'm close or not, but I do know that it will beep for me, so we'll just wait that out. And then I am going to go ahead and, like I said, just rotate that. Not, of course, 180, probably about 90 degrees. I sometimes will go just a little bit just to make sure that all of that design gets covered. Because as you can see, there's about a gap, about an inch in there that's not covered. So we want to make sure that all of that is getting pressed. We'll go ahead and get that done. Yeah, so this is a design you definitely could reproduce in our design tool, or like me, do it in another program. But I really do like this look. I think it's a really cool one. All right. Now I do typically, when I am doing anything with stainless steel tumblers, water bottles, I do typically peel it pretty quick. I have found that the paper sticks if you don't. And what I have done with that is, ooh, did not work, but that's okay. Learning, as always. I did have a little bit more of an overlap than I normally do, and it did kind of mess that up, but it's okay. We can redo that. But that is a good way to do that. And it was just simply that my paper was overlapping. Normally I cut it right to the edge. And as you can see, there's my water bottle. Looks great. Really good design. I would just do that paper a little bit tighter on there. And then, like I said, cut it so that it's not overlapping quite so much on that edge. But otherwise, that's kind of a look at how to do that full wrap tumbler. All right.
Lori wants to point out that she did not mention the blowouts this time.
She did not. She did not. All right. Any other questions?
No, she did say a 4-pack of pressing pillows is less than $20 on Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have a couple of those. I think we got some for something too. Someone sent it with something else, so we do have a few of those floating around. Really, really handy just to give you that even surface. But like we said, this is stuffed with a towel. I know that some people will stack cardboard in there too. So foam board will work too. So whatever works best, just to kind of give you that flat pressing surface. All right, for items that curve, use a convection oven. So this is a wine tumbler, very, very popular, comes up every year at Christmas. Really hard to design for because you do have to have it curved to fit this. The other thing is that it is not the same depth here as it is here. So it's really, really hard to get a good press on this. This is where shrink wrapping it and putting it in that sublimation convection oven is really handy. So that's really a great reason to have one, is for something like this. You can also do like higher volumes. You can do mug wraps and do a few mugs at a time. But it really helps for something like this that just isn't, it caves. It's narrower here than it is here. Same thing with this. This is another one, and this is easier to design for, but same thing. It's tapered. It's more narrow at the bottom than it is at the top. So instead of just designing around that and having a small design area, it's a really good idea with something like this to use that convection oven. They come in really handy for this. For odd shaped things too, I've done some bowls where the design goes around the outside. You just put that little sleeve on there and then use the heat gun to kind of to shrink wrap that onto there, and then that helps create that pressure that you need for sublimation. So convection ovens are great for things like our wine tumbler that aren't even, that aren't the same width at the top as they are at the bottom. That tapered look. Wine tumblers are crazy because they're not only tapered, but they're a little curved too. So they're a little bit of both. All right. So pressing on polyester with Tru-Pix paper. One of the biggest tips I can give you with this is that you want to make sure and rip the edges of your paper, because otherwise you sometimes get a flat line. So wherever the paper sits on the polyester, it tends to press in and it gives a line that just doesn't wash out. So let me demonstrate. I'm actually going to go into the design tool for this one. Always remember, if you go to Learn and Workshops, you can check out what we're going to be doing. So that does have our upcoming workshops there. I'm going to go ahead and pop into my Sawgrass. Go ahead and log in. All right. And we'll go ahead and design. Now I will go ahead and pull up a shirt template, or I could just do an 8.5 by 11 sheet because I know that's what I'm going to go on to. So I'm actually going to do a custom canvas for this one. I'm going to go 8 by 10 and start designing. And I don't know why, but to me today, this is what I think is cute. So we are going to go in and filter down to my area that I want to go to. Make sure I got it. All right, and we're going to do our little gnome. I know this is fall. Maybe I'm a little hot, getting into summer and want to do something a little cooler. But I do have my little gnome guy here, or gal. Gnome gal here. Make it a little smaller, and we'll go ahead and hit print. Could add some happy fall y'all text. We'll leave it as it is today. All right, so that is going to open up my print button. We're going to hit print. And then we'll open up our print utility. There we go. It's going to remind me to ask my permission to open. Okay. Crop to image area, as I always do. Center that on the page. Portrait's fine for this. Mirror is fine. I'm going to change this to polyester. And when I do, that button's going to go away. We're going to do this on letter paper, and I'm going to go ahead and do 2 copies. All right. All right. So I'm going to grab my 100% polyester shirt. I am using my True Pix paper. I was like, I do have True Pix in there, right? Rode set that up for me, so I had a moment of, did I really do that correctly? All right. Pre-press that real fast. I'm just going to kind of hold it down. I do think I want to up my pressure just a tad. It feels a little too light on me. Yep, that feels better. Right. Alrighty. Haven't done a polyester shirt in a while, so got to get used again to putting the tape down. Now, yes, this is a little warm. I probably would not put it on this hot normally with polyester. We're just doing a quick demo for you. All right, so we are going 400 degrees for about 45 seconds. 40 to 45 is where we're going to go when we are doing this. We'll go ahead and let that finish, and I'm going to grab my other print. All right, so I'm probably going to cut this about 5 seconds short, do closer to 40 than 45. All right. You can kind of see it on here. There is that line, actually got some ink on there. But you see there is that line around the edge on this, and that is what we want to avoid. You see it here as well, kind of that edge around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rip the edges of my paper. What this does is this softens that area. Keeps it from being quite so harsh. Now I know there's some other tips out there. There are people who just lower the pressure. There are also people who will use a pressing pillow for this very purpose too. I have found this is kind of the easiest method. Just kind of rip around that edge before I tape that down. Okay, just do a little pre-press, just a few seconds. Make sure that I'm putting him on right side up. Hold that down with some tape. All right. We'll go ahead and let that press really fast. You notice I'm becoming friends with the press. It has taken me a little bit to learn it and get used to it, but I generally remember all the little quirks to get it right. All right. And there you go. No lines, looks great. There's my little gnomes, reminding me of summer or winter or fall while it's so warm. All right, so while I am here, I'm going to go ahead and change this temperature because I know what other tips I have for you. So I'm going to go ahead and take it down. And yeah, and that's that high pressure. You can see a lot more effort for me there to push that down and back up. All right, so we should be set. Okay, now 8, 9, and 10 all go together. So I'll read them and then we're going to give it a shot just so you can see it. So for fabric, especially with your Versaflex light paper, we want to do a pre-press and a finishing press. The pre-press not only gets any moisture out that may be in the shirt, or getting wrinkles out, it's also going to get that moisture out that may be in there because of the expander that gets laid down with the Versaflex ink. When you're going onto the Versaflex light paper, we want to make sure and get any moisture out because it may actually mess with the expander since it is water-based. And then we are going to do a finishing press. So when we are done, you're going to see me put the paper back on top, go another 5 to 10 seconds, just a little kiss of a press. It helps just kind of flatten out the ink, get everything kind of set. And so that's a big tip that I've learned in the last few weeks is to do that quick little finishing press just to improve the looks and everything. For Versaflex Light, you're going to perfect the hover and drop. I know there's a lot of communication out there about the fact that the ink is wet and that you are putting it in wet. I will tell you, I did not reposition a whole lot anyway. The only times I would really do a lot of like lining up and everything and putting it on and pulling it off and moving it is drinkware. We're not really doing Versaflex Light with the drinkware, so we're kind of lucky there. You will see I do sometimes still trying to get my alignment, making sure that I'm getting it perfectly lined up. But you notice I actually flip things over a lot of the times. So I'll actually put the paper down, put the wood on the paper, and then flip it. No issues, no slippage. Some of the things you just kind of learn, you get a lot better at remembering to put your tray out so that it doesn't fall off. You design in such a way that you're not going to put your fingers in the ink. So perfect the hover and drop and you are good. And I'll show you that in just a second. And then finally, go slow and don't stop to check with Versaflex Light. I heard this, and I will give full credit to Emanuela, who is with our dealer Netchi. Emanuela said that what she has realized is that because it is a true peel, instead of just kind of falling off as you just saw with the polyester, it's one of the reasons I wanted to do it. It's a true peel. And it reminds me, and my brain immediately goes to peeling vinyl. And if you have ever peeled the excess vinyl off and you're leaving the letters down, you are always being very, very careful to check to make sure that the letters are actually staying on the paper and not coming up with what you're peeling off. So when you're weeding, you're doing the same motion. I've always called it a sticker motion. You're doing the same motion, but you pause and you make sure that everything is still there. Don't you worry about it. It's going to be there. It's not going to come with the paper. So you can move a little bit faster and you don't have to have that worry of something sticking down. So you're going to be good. I promise. It's just a smooth peel. So that's my final 3 tips. You're going to see me do it in just a second. I'm going to do a pre-press and then I'm going to do a finishing press. For Versaflex Light, I'm going to perfect that hover and drop. I've learned, well, I already knew, that the bottom plate of the press is not hot, it's warm. So it's really easy to kind of position your hands to kind of help you wiggle it and keep it above. And then finally, go slow and don't stop, but you don't have to stop and check. So just keep going. It's that general peel. So let's go ahead and pull up a file and do a quick Versaflex. And I'm going to remember to change my paper. And I'm going to hope that we put it face down.
Face down. Just as you're holding it.
All right. So it is face down. So it is ready to go. So if you've never heard it, one of my most embarrassing moments working at Sawgrass is that this is expanded because we have had 11 by 17 in there today. And I worked for the company for 3 years before I knew that the SG-1000, or at that time the SG-800, had a lid that pulled out to cover up the paper. It took me 3 years to realize that. So. All right. That's my moment of the day. Let's grab a file. Alrighty.
Lori said you were not alone in that.
Yeah, it did take me quite a minute to realize it. Very sad. All right. I swore I saw my art earlier, but I do not know where I placed it, so we'll just go with this one. Okay. Actually, I bet I know what I did. Nope. All right, we're good. Okay, so same things as I always do. I'm going to crop the image area just to make sure there's no extra white affecting that. I'm going to go down and I'm going to change this to landscape. I am going to leave it just for light colors on because of that yellow. I'm going to center that on my page, and I'm going to do this on cotton. My press is right at the right temperature, which is lovely, and we're ready to go. Okay, so one of the other things, you do need to go relatively fast, but it doesn't have to be instantaneous. So I'm going to pre-press my shirt. My page is going to be perfectly fine waiting on me. Make sure and pull my tray out. All right. Let's do a quick pre-press. And then we are going to remember to set our time. Okay. Swing that around. All right. So let me show you my soon-to-be patented method. I am just going to hold those edges. This is actually pretty easy because there's a pretty good spot to grab. You notice that when I put my shirt on, I made sure that the tag was lined up with the top of the press, with the, I guess that's the arm of the press. Made sure that I have roughly the same amount of shirt on each side. Now I'm going to take this. I'm going to go, I know it's about 3 inches now. And you notice, as I said, my hands are here. And then I can just drop that. Put my paper on top. And here we go. Do you have high pressure? Always high pressure for your Versaflex Light on any fabric. And we'll do a quick 30 seconds. And then you can watch my peel. Alrighty. Now we do want to go relatively quick on this. And like I said, I don't have to worry about if the letters are sticking to the paper. So it's all going to be right there and good. Now I am going to make y'all wait just a second. I will go ahead and do the finishing press. Another one of those really easy designs, and I think this fits into the dad joke category, and so maybe a good Father's Day gift, hint, hint, if you don't have one yet. All right, and that is it. My Laughing Gas shirt. And I hope you kind of saw how that peel works and how that looks. Another hold up for the camera. And there's my top 10 tips. So hopefully that'll help make pressing a little bit easier. I think a lot of times we don't put enough consideration into when there's color issues, when there's other issues, then it may be the press or the pressing process that does it. So I like to do this ever so often just to kind of tell you what I've learned and show you what I've learned. And I'm learning every day about both sublimation and our new Versaflex system with the Versaflex light paper. So we will be back tomorrow morning. I'm really excited about this one because it gets back into my heart, and that's going to be some top tips for the Sawgrass software. Thank you again for joining us today. I am Rhonda. Hope to see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.